Those who are familiar with HubSpot probably are familiar with our blog and all of the great content we put out. That is not even, it's not even like a veiled advertisement, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, we like to be thought leaders, right? So I think the reason HubSpot is so successful, especially among growing, scaling companies, is that not only are we offering a superb product, you know, the best CRM, the number one CRM if you're scaling, but we're also going to give you some thought leadership. I remember, once again, tying back to my former life, I remember reading the HubSpot blog to get email templates for cold outreach or lines when I was making these calls. So yeah, we're not just a tech company, we're thought leaders in the industry.
Jim Tata, welcome to the ROI Online Podcast.
Amazing, right?
What does HubSpot do for marketing?
Wow, that is once again a very loaded question, because HubSpot, started out as a marketing platform, right? So, I mean, if we're rattling off features, right, we can create your content through, we can have your blog, we can actually host your social media, we can do your email marketing. That in and of itself can replace 3 or 4 disparate tools, right? But really what I like to say, if I'm simplifying it for marketing, is we can streamline your top of the funnel activities from conversion all the way to handing it off to a one-to-one conversation, whether it's sales or account management. So it's not only about the creation of content, it's about measuring the conversion and making sure that your communication is effective.
Think about what you're expecting of your marketing person in your in-house. Okay, so I want you to write this great article. Let's get it on our blog. Let's push it out to social media, but then let's measure to see if it's any good. And then let's document who's looking at it and if they filled out a form and what did we follow up to nurture them a little further to where we do get to have a sales conversation. That's a huge expectation.
And I think the key word you said there was measure, right? Because when you have everything in one place versus a cobbled together MarTech platform, it's tough to measure. I've seen people who have a cobbled together MarTech platform who are trying to measure in an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet. And they're like, well, they hit this and then this is the conversion. Whereas I say, hey, if you move to HubSpot, we have this kind of reporting out of the box. So measuring that effectiveness doesn't disrupt your team from creating great content and doesn't disrupt the sales team from having to put together numbers in terms of leads coming in. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think if you're talking about the platform play, if you're talking about consolidation of tools, measure is a big part of that.
So you're listening or watching, we're having a great conversation with Jim Tata. He's a channel account manager with HubSpot. He's my channel account manager, and we're successful together. So I tell you what, Jim, here's another question I get is what is HubSpot sales?
Yes. So HubSpot, so you talked about marketing, right? And funnel's kind of a dirty, bad word because we've retired the funnel. We've moved on to the flywheel, but just for today's podcast demonstration purposes, I want you to visualize a funnel. So you talked about HubSpot marketing. That's like that top of the funnel that we're talking about, right? Conversion, get them, nurture those folks. Now, HubSpot sales is when you take that top of the funnel and you change that one-to-many marketing conversation to a one-to-one sales conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you have, okay, great marketing qualified lead. They're now a sales qualified lead. Let's talk to them one-to-one. And however your organization decides to transition that conversation, that's where HubSpot sales can help. If someone hits the pricing page on your company's website or fills out a certain form, right? That's where you can say, okay, time to assign this to a salesperson and have a salesperson act and try to get that first meeting with them or whatever the first step in your sales process is.
So it's a set of tools. Actually, what is Sales Hub?
Yeah.
What is HubSpot Sales Hub?
Sales Hub are those one-to-one sets of tools that we're talking about. So early on in this conversation, I talked about the idea of when I walked in, all of a sudden I had meetings. Right. So the idea of someone filling out a form, being converted, getting an email from me, a one-to-one email from me, and getting my meetings link. Those are some of the examples of the sets of tools that come in with HubSpot sales. And oh, by the way, HubSpot has a free CRM, which I know we're going to talk about in a bit, but a lot of the sales tools are enhancing the free CRM with your one-to-one outreach. And you can, on top of that, now I'm really talking about that first chevron in the funnel transition. Now, on top of that, you can measure your revenue. You can create your opportunities. You can make sure that your sales team is following the processes through playbooks and through measuring, deal records. So really it's to your point, it's a set of one-to-one tools to not only start the conversations on a one-to-one basis, deepen those relationships, and then you can manage and measure the pipeline on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah. Imagine, so you have a salesperson, right? And so you're expecting the salesperson to document their activities because you're trying to get an idea of whether they're being effective, how you can support them. Maybe you're trying to figure out what they need as far as a template or some materials that they could send on that would support them in their sales process. You've set a schedule on a calendar with a salesperson before. And so these things you have to Frankenstein a system together generally to coordinate that and empower the salesperson to be more effective online. And that sales hub has them all nicely integrated so that actually we're not expecting that salesperson to do extra documentation. We're actually supporting and facilitating that sales person with helpful materials and technology.
Steve, are you trying to say that salespeople avoid admin work?
I hate it. Right. Here's what, as a salesperson, was like, well, they want me to fill out a report. Well, if you're wrong or you didn't put the right time or whatever, it's like, well, Steve, are you being honest here? I was like, dude, you're asking me to do a report, but report on myself, give you a cudgel to hit me with because I'm not hitting my quota when I am hitting my quota. And it's like, you want to avoid these inherently as a salesperson because it's hard enough just to sell.
I would agree. I think another thing that's great about our sales tools is that sales is a science of numbers. And this is long before my time at HubSpot. I believe that if you can reverse engineer, your revenue goals from, all right, if I need to hit X amount of dollars in my quota, that means I need to close X number of deals, which means I need to have X number of proposals, X number of meetings, X number of calls, and you reverse engineer that. I think with HubSpot, what's great about that is once you have those numbers established in terms of what's effective, as a salesperson, you can focus on selling. My emails are automatically being logged. If I'm creating enough deals and I know I'm hitting my deal creation numbers, I can feel good that it's automatically being measured. And my manager, my director, whoever I'm reporting to as an individual sales contributor knows what I'm doing without me feeling like I'm doing data entry. I would say that's been the biggest thing. And then two other aspects that are huge are the playbooks. So if I'm conducting a meeting for the first time, oh man, this is my first time selling this really complex deal. I have a playbook that I can follow. And then on top of that, okay, if I'm moving this deal through our stages as we have it set up as an organization, okay, I'm going to move this from discovery to negotiation. Oh, nope. I actually have to have these aspects filled out. I need to know this information. So I always joke that these tools, these one-to-one sales tools, keep sales leaders from having to micromanage by just instilling a process that they don't always have to be checking in on. It's just there. And in order to move the deal forward, you need to have the right pieces of information.
So here's another question I get is like, is HubSpot a good CRM?
I mean, I would say we are the number one CRM for scaling companies. And what we mean by that is that if you started off by saying, if I'm an entrepreneur, if I'm someone who's establishing something from a business standpoint, we are the best choice for that. And clearly I'm biased, but what I mean by that is that because we can handle these businesses of all these different, sizes and industries, we are probably the best CRM, especially if it's your first foray into looking into this tool. And because of the different levels, from our free to our starter, to our professional, to our enterprise, and once again, biased answer, we have a stellar sales team that can help discover, prescribe, and diagnose based on your needs. So yeah, I would say we are the best if your company is scaling.
I've worked with a bunch of CRMs, and when I ran into HubSpot, it's so intuitive. It's so easy. It's easy to customize. There's so many things about it that really made my job as a salesperson easy.
Mhm.
It's intimidating to adopt a new software.
Oh, especially if you're looking at some of the bigger players out there, you have your Salesforces, your Dynamics, all of those. I'm not going to deny those aren't powerful pieces of software, but the word intimidating, is almost an understatement there, because
Mhm.
there's when I was with that office supply company and I was managing a sales team, I used to have to create reports,
Yeah.
and not in HubSpot, in Salesforce. And I got pretty good at it, but then, I was almost like the goat. I almost became like an engineer because then other sales managers coming to me, hey, can you make this report for me? Because I knew how to do it. Whereas HubSpot, to your point, the UX is just as powerful, but it's much, much easier for someone. You don't have to hire an admin to use our software. I think that says everything.